Seventh grade, and happy Monday. I hope that you had a fairly decent weekend this weekend. Today we are going to talk about the second half of 9.5, which coincidentally is the last section in chapter 9. So this would be in your notes 9.5 part 2, right? So as a quick review, remember last week we talked about different kinds of angles. Adjacent means next to. Complementary means they add up to 90. Supplementary means they add up to 180. And vertical angles are those ones in an X that are opposite each other. If that's hard for you to remember, make sure you have your notes. Also, make sure you watch the previous video. One thing I forgot to mention in the previous video was one way to help you remember complementary and supplementary. Alphabetically, complementary comes before supplementary, right? So C comes before S, and complementary, remember, is adding to 90 degrees and supplementary adding to 180 degrees, right? So think 90 is less than 180, so that comes first, right? So complementary comes before supplementary, 90 before 180. That's one way to help us remember how to keep those two straight. All right. So we're going to talk about some ways to figure out angle measures, all right? So the first thing that I have to make sure that you know, if you see an angle that is marked with a little box like that, that means that that is a right angle. Or in other words, its measure is 90 degrees, right? So anytime you see the little box like that, its measure is 90 degrees. So if I were to give you a picture that looks like this, and I said that this angle in here is x, and this angle in here is 70 degrees, you should be able to figure out what x is. Because this is a right angle, these two adjacent angles add up to 90 degrees. So x plus 70 has to equal 90. To solve that, we subtract 70 from both sides, and x is 20. You may have been able to do that in your head, but writing it down and showing your work is super important because sometimes it's not going to be as easy to do that in your head, right? But because these two form a right angle, they add up to 90 degrees, right? Another example of that same sort of idea would be if I have this picture, which is let's say that this is x and this is 2x, right? Well, notice this right here is a straight line, a straight angle, which I know I talked about a little bit last time, but just to review, a straight line is 180 degrees, right? These two angles, they are adjacent, they're next to, they make a straight line. That means that they are supplementary, or they add to 180 degrees. So 2x plus x has to equal 180, right? Again, this is a straight line, so these two angles add up to 180. All right, so in your head, 2 apples plus an apple is 3 apples, right? So 2x plus x is 3x. How do I solve for x? Divide both sides by 3. So x equals 60. So if we want to fill in our picture then, this angle here is 60 degrees, and that angle there is 2 times 60, which is 120 degrees. All right? So if we have supplementary angles, they add up to 180. If we have complementary angles, like here, they add up to 90. We're going to do some solving equations, which I know we know how to do because we've been working on that for a while, to figure out some angle measures. All right, now, not adjacent, vertical angles, excuse me. Let's talk about vertical angles here. If I know that this angle right here is 110 degrees, let's talk about the rest of this picture for a second. If this one here is 110 degrees, that means that this angle plus this angle here have to add up to 180 because I have a straight line, just like in the previous problem, right? So 110 plus something has to equal 180, right? Well, to figure out that something, we subtract 110 from both sides, and that something equals 70, right? So this angle here has to be 70 degrees. Now, this angle here at the bottom, well, that forms a straight line with this 70-degree angle, right? So what angle measure forms a straight line with 70? Which one adds up to 180? Well, hopefully in your head, you see that that's 110 degrees, right? And then this last angle, well, we look at that, and we could either use this 110 and say this 110 plus this last angle has to equal 180, or this 110 plus this angle has to equal 180. Either way, this angle here is 70 degrees. All right, what do we notice? Well, hopefully you noticed that the vertical angles, the angles that are opposite each other, equal the same thing, right? These two angles are congruent, and these two angles are congruent. They have the same measure. And it's not just because I picked 110, right? I could have picked any angle measure. So let's do it again. So let's say that this here is 60 degrees. Well, that means that to get to 180, I need how much more? Yep, think about it, 120 degrees. And then to get to 180, again, it would be 60. And then to get to 180, 120 again, right? So it doesn't matter what the measure of this angle is, its vertical angle is always going to be congruent, right? So vertical angles are congruent. Write it down. Vertical angles are congruent. And remember, that means that they have the same measure. Congruent means have the same measure. All right, so if I were to give you a picture like this, and I said that this right here is 85 degrees, could you figure out X, Y, and Z? So pause it and see if you can figure it out, and then we'll go over the answers. So hopefully you figured it out. So 85 plus X has to equal 180, right? So we subtract 85 from both, and X is 95. And then Y is opposite that, the vertical angle, so that has to be 85. And Z is opposite the 95. Those are vertical angles, so that has to be 95, right? All right. That's really all that you need to know to complete the rest of the assignment. So go ahead and make sure you have this all written down, and then go ahead and go to Big Ideas Math and finish or work on your next assignment. See you on Tuesday.